Michael woke up early that Saturday with a mix of excitement and nerves, knowing he had promised his nephews, Ethan and Liam, a full day at the amusement park. The sky was bright, the sun casting golden light across the quiet streets, and the air carried the promise of summer adventures. Michael packed the car with snacks, water bottles, sunscreen, and a small backpack filled with essentials, checking each item twice to make sure nothing was forgotten. Ethan, the older of the two, was bouncing with energy, reminding Michael repeatedly about the roller coasters, while little Liam clutched his favorite toy, talking nonstop about cotton candy and the Ferris wheel. The drive to the park was filled with laughter, teasing, and the playful arguments only young boys can have, their voices filling the car with a lively, infectious energy. When they arrived, the parking lot was already buzzing with families, the smell of popcorn, funnel cakes, and fried treats mingling with the warm scent of summer grass. Michael held the boys' hands tightly as they weaved through crowds, navigating toward the ticket booths and entrance gates, feeling a sense of pride watching them so full of life. But as they reached the gates, a movement in the crowd caught Michael's eye, and he froze for just a moment, recognizing a familiar figure among the throng of parkgoers. It was Carol, his ex-mother-in-law, someone he hadn't seen in years, her presence unexpectedly stirring a mix of old emotions he hadn't anticipated confronting today. Her smile was gentle, warm, and familiar, yet tinged with a distance that reminded him of the complex history between them, the divorce that had reshaped his life and left memories he hadn't fully processed. Carol's eyes met his across the crowd, and for a second the noise of the park, the screams of thrill-seekers on rides, and the chatter of families seemed to fade into the background, leaving Michael suspended in a quiet, almost surreal moment. Ethan tugged at his sleeve, reminding him of the roller coaster line ahead, and Liam shouted excitedly about spotting a clown handing out balloons. Michael shook off the sudden wave of nostalgia and anxiety, forcing himself to focus on the boys, yet he couldn't help stealing glances at Carol, feeling a tug of familiarity and curiosity. She approached slowly, her steps measured, cautious yet graceful, as if unsure how their paths would cross today. Michael's mind raced, recalling all the shared family dinners, quiet conversations, and the subtle warmth she had once brought into his life, feelings long buried under years of separation and disappointment. He wondered briefly if this was just coincidence or fate nudging them together again, a gentle reminder of bonds that time couldn't completely erase. As Carol came closer, the park around them seemed to hum with activity, children laughing, rides spinning, music playing, but Michael's attention was pulled toward her, a mixture of apprehension and intrigue settling in his chest. She greeted him softly, "Michael, it's been a while," and her voice carried a tone that was at once friendly and deeply personal, sparking memories of the past he hadn't realized he still held on to. Michael returned the greeting, careful yet genuine, feeling the weight of years in that simple exchange, the ease of conversation tangled with the complexity of their shared history. The boys ran ahead, squealing with delight as they chased each other toward the first ride, leaving Michael and Carol to navigate the brief, quiet space between them, a space heavy with unspoken words, lingering emotions, and a subtle awareness that this day might change something neither of them fully expected. Michael felt his heart beat a little faster, a mix of nervousness and curiosity, realizing that seeing Carol again brought a rush of feelings he hadn't anticipated, a blend of old familiarity, unresolved tension, and a delicate spark of something he couldn't yet name. The smell of popcorn and sugar lingered in the air, mingling with the faint scent of her perfume, grounding him in the present while tugging him toward the past. As Carol smiled at the boys, laughing softly at their antics, Michael felt a strange warmth, a reminder of the gentle, caring nature she had always possessed. The amusement park around them was alive with energy, yet for a moment, Michael felt suspended in a bubble of memory and emotion, aware that this encounter, brief as it might seem, carried a subtle significance. He watched her interact with the children, her eyes bright, her gestures soft, and realized that beneath the layers of history and distance, a connection still existed, fragile but unmistakable. Michael reminded himself to focus on the day's purpose, to give Ethan and Liam joy, to share in their laughter and adventure, but he couldn't shake the awareness that Carol's presence had changed the tone of the morning, adding an unexpected, quiet tension to the otherwise light-hearted day. The roller coaster line moved slowly, the children bouncing in anticipation, and Michael adjusted his grip on their hands, smiling, yet feeling the undercurrent of emotion swirling beneath his careful composure. Every glance toward Carol, every small interaction, felt loaded with meaning, subtle and unspoken, and Michael realized that the simple act of being at the amusement park today had become far more complex than he had imagined. He felt a mixture of apprehension and hope, uncertainty and recognition, as the sounds of laughter, the whirring of rides, and the aroma of sweets surrounded them. With the boys chattering excitedly, tugging him forward, Michael took a deep breath, ready to dive into the day's fun while carrying the quiet, unexpected weight of a familiar presence that had reappeared, uninvited yet strangely welcome, leaving him to wonder what this encounter might mean for the rest of the day. Michael followed Ethan and Liam through the crowded paths of the amusement park, trying to focus on their excitement, but his mind kept drifting back to Carol, who seemed to glide through the crowd with the same effortless warmth he remembered from years ago. She had stayed at a distance at first, watching him with that soft, knowing smile, and when their eyes met again near the carousel, a wave of memories washed over him, family dinners, quiet talks over coffee, laughter that had once filled his home before everything had changed. Carol approached him cautiously, her presence gentle, unassuming, yet it carried an undeniable weight of familiarity. "It really has been a long time, Michael," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant, and he felt his chest tighten with a mix of surprise and something more tender that he hadn't expected. He nodded, smiling politely, aware that this interaction was loaded with years of unspoken words, moments missed, and emotions that neither of them had fully processed. As they spoke, Ethan and Liam ran ahead, laughing and pointing at the bright lights of the Ferris wheel, their voices pulling Michael back into the present, yet he remained acutely aware of Carol beside him, her gaze following the boys with a protective, almost maternal care that stirred something deep within him. He noticed how she laughed when Liam tripped over a small curb, quickly offering him her hand and a reassuring smile, and he realized how much he had missed this warmth, this ease of connection, that had once been part of his life in ways he hadn't appreciated at the time. They walked together through the park, Carol keeping a polite but steady distance, yet there was an unspoken rhythm to their conversation, a delicate dance of words, glances, and small gestures that hinted at the bond they had shared and perhaps could never fully leave behind. Michael found himself asking about her life since the divorce, her voice carrying stories of challenges, quiet triumphs, and moments of loneliness, and he listened intently, feeling a mix of empathy and a longing for a connection he hadn't realized he still desired. The boys ran ahead again, squealing with delight as a roller coaster zoomed past, their laughter echoing through the park, and Michael noticed how Carol's eyes softened, a small smile tugging at her lips, reflecting memories of simpler times, family ties, and the gentle intimacy of being understood without words. He felt an odd tension, a pull between staying focused on the day with his nephews and allowing himself to be drawn into this unexpected reunion, and he wondered whether Carol felt the same mixture of nostalgia and curiosity that he did. At one point, as they paused near a cotton candy stand, she offered to buy a treat for the boys, and Michael watched her hand over the pink fluff with the same care she had once shown him, her movements unhurried, thoughtful, and almost mesmerizing. The noise of the park, the screams from the rides, the chatter of families, the music floating from speakers, blended into the background as Michael found himself caught in the quiet intensity of these small moments with Carol, realizing that despite the years and changes, there was a subtle, undeniable connection that neither distance nor time had erased. They shared smiles, exchanged stories about the boys' favorite rides, and Michael noticed how easily conversation flowed, how her laughter felt familiar yet fresh, evoking a bittersweet sense of longing he hadn't expected to confront today. He remembered all the little things, the way she always noticed details, how she could comfort without being overbearing, the gentle kindness that had once been a part of his daily life, and he felt a mixture of gratitude and regret, knowing that life had shifted in ways that made this reconnection fleeting yet intensely meaningful. Carol spoke of her own reflections, hinting at moments of loneliness, growth, and the small joys she had found, and Michael listened, his heart quietly warming to her words, appreciating the honesty and vulnerability she allowed herself to show. Time seemed to pass differently around her, each moment stretched with significance, each glance and laugh carrying more weight than it should in a casual encounter, and Michael realized that the day, meant to be simple and joyful for his nephews, had taken on a quiet, emotional depth he hadn't anticipated. The boys ran off again toward a game booth, and Michael and Carol exchanged a look, a fleeting recognition of the bond that had existed, subtly acknowledging that despite the complicated past, some connections linger with a tenderness that refuses to fade. He wondered whether this day could be the start of something new, even if small and uncertain, or whether it would remain a memory tinged with warmth and longing, a gentle reminder of what once had been. As they walked side by side, Michael felt a mixture of comfort and tension, a quiet thrill in sharing these moments with Carol again, aware that each shared smile, each small gesture, carried more meaning than either of them would admit aloud. The sun began to shift in the sky, casting golden light over the park, painting the scene in soft warmth, and Michael felt a quiet shift in his heart, a subtle realization that some bonds, even complicated ones, could carry forward in ways that were tender, meaningful, and unexpectedly hopeful. Every step, every laugh, every glance seemed amplified in significance, leaving Michael with a sense of quiet wonder, curiosity, and a stirring of emotions he hadn't expected, as if the universe had orchestrated this encounter to remind him of connections that, despite distance, could still feel alive, vibrant, and profoundly human. He knew the day was far from over, yet already, this chance reunion with Carol had transformed a simple trip to the amusement park into a delicate tapestry of memory, emotion, and possibility, leaving him to navigate the balance between joy with his nephews and the gentle pull of an unexpected, meaningful connection that neither of them could ignore. The afternoon sun was high and bright as Michael guided Ethan and Liam from one ride to the next, their laughter echoing through the amusement park. Yet his attention kept drifting back to Carol, who had now settled into a casual rhythm of following at a respectful distance, her presence a quiet, comforting thread woven into the day's chaos. Each time their paths crossed, there was a subtle electricity, a gentle pull that neither had expected, and Michael felt it in the small ways she interacted with his nephews, the way she knelt to help Liam with a laced-up shoe, the way she gently corrected Ethan when he tried to sneak past a line, or how she offered both of them cotton candy with a smile that carried warmth and nostalgia. The sight stirred memories he hadn't realized he still held on to, evenings at her house, the sound of her laughter spilling across the kitchen, the way she had always listened without judgment, and suddenly he felt a pang of longing, a mixture of admiration and wistful regret that life had shifted them apart. As they waited in line for the bumper cars, Michael found himself unconsciously standing closer to her than necessary, drawn to her calm energy amid the chaos of screaming children and spinning rides, and he noticed her glances toward him, quick and fleeting, yet loaded with recognition, as if acknowledging that the past had not completely faded from either of them. Conversation flowed more naturally now, no longer constrained by the cautious distance of earlier hours. They shared small stories about work, family, and the boys' habits, and Michael felt a comfort that surprised him, a gentle sense of familiarity that wrapped around him like a soft, reassuring cloak. Carol laughed freely when the boys accidentally bumped their cars together, her hands lightly brushing Michael's shoulder as she guided them, and the contact sent an unexpected warmth through him, a reminder of times when touch had been simple, familiar, and charged with unspoken care. Michael caught himself thinking how much she had changed subtly, her confidence, her ease, the gentle strength in her posture, but at the same time, she was exactly the same, her presence carrying the same kindness and subtle charm he had always admired. The afternoon rolled on with a mixture of activity and quiet pauses, watching the boys scream in delight on roller coasters, cheering for them at the ring toss, and sharing cotton candy by the fountain, and in all of it, Michael noticed how effortlessly Carol fit into these moments, her presence comforting, grounding, and slightly intoxicating. At one point, as the boys chased each other around a game booth, Carol and Michael found themselves standing side by side, caught in a private rhythm amid the public spectacle. She spoke softly about recent changes in her life, her tone intimate yet casual, and Michael found himself hanging on every word, appreciating her honesty, the vulnerability she allowed herself, and the way her voice seemed to wrap around him like an old, familiar song. He realized that he had missed this, the small, quiet interactions that carried depth, the subtle emotional connection that didn't require grand gestures or declarations, and he felt a tug of hope mixed with caution, knowing that the day, while fleeting, offered a glimpse of something precious that could not be forced but was nonetheless deeply felt. The boys' laughter echoed again as they darted toward the Ferris wheel, leaving Michael and Carol momentarily alone, and in that pause, their conversation took on a more personal note. She shared her reflections on life, love, and loss, the experiences that had shaped her since the divorce, and Michael felt a strange intimacy in being the one she chose to share these thoughts with, a quiet trust that warmed his heart and stirred emotions he had long buried. Watching her, he noticed the way her eyes softened when she spoke, the subtle expressions that hinted at thoughtfulness, care, and perhaps even a quiet longing that mirrored his own, and he felt himself drawn closer, not physically, but emotionally, caught in a gentle pull of nostalgia and curiosity. Time seemed to stretch, each moment rich with meaning, the smell of popcorn, the music from nearby rides, the distant screams of children, and the sunlight glinting off the Ferris wheel, but within it all, the connection between them felt profound, delicate, and alive. Michael realized that this day, meant for simple fun with his nephews, had turned into something far more complex and meaningful, a day of rediscovery, of unspoken understanding, and of quiet romantic tension that neither he nor Carol could ignore. Even as they navigated the crowds, the roller coasters, and the candy stalls, every glance, every smile, every small touch carried weight, a shared acknowledgement of a bond that had survived time, distance, and the shifting tides of life. When the boys ran ahead to a water ride, Michael and Carol paused at the edge of the path, a quiet stillness settling between them, and for a moment, it felt like the rest of the park had faded away, leaving only the two of them suspended in a bubble of familiarity, longing, and gentle connection. Carol's smile lingered, soft and knowing, and Michael felt an unspoken question hanging in the air. Could a bond thought lost be quietly reborn in these small, tender moments? He wanted to linger, to explore the feelings that stirred unexpectedly, yet he knew that time and circumstance had placed boundaries on their connection, making each shared second precious, fleeting, and unforgettable. The afternoon continued with a rhythm of joy and small, private intimacies, the boys' excitement providing the backdrop to a story that was slowly unfolding between Michael and Carol, one of emotional rediscovery, subtle attraction, and the gentle rekindling of a connection that neither had expected but both felt deeply. By the time the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the park and bathing the rides in a warm golden glow, Michael felt a mixture of exhilaration, contentment, and quiet yearning. The day had been far more than a simple visit to an amusement park, it had become a delicate dance of shared laughter, memories, and emotions, leaving him wondering how such an unexpected reunion could carry so much meaning and how the rest of the day, and perhaps their lives beyond it, might unfold. In the shadow of this tender, rekindled connection, as the afternoon began to fade into evening, the amusement park's lights flickered on, casting a warm glow over the laughter and excitement that still filled every corner, and Michael felt a quiet shift in the air, a softening of the day's earlier chaos as the boys ran ahead, squealing with delight, chasing each other toward the last few rides before closing time, leaving him to walk alongside Carol, whose presence had become both comforting and unexpectedly stirring, a gentle tension that neither of them could ignore yet neither dared to fully acknowledge. The sun hung low, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, reflecting off the Ferris wheel and the carousel, and Michael found himself caught between focusing on his nephew's happiness and the subtle pull he felt toward Carol, who moved with her usual grace, her laughter light and genuine, echoing in a way that made his chest tighten with a mixture of nostalgia and quiet longing. Each step beside her was filled with unspoken emotions, a rhythm of shared memories and subtle glances that seemed to say more than words ever could, and Michael realized that this day had transformed from a simple outing into a delicate exploration of feelings he hadn't expected to confront, emotions that were tender, complex, and wholly human. As they stopped briefly by a food stand to grab some snacks for the boys, Carol handed Michael a small paper bag of fries, her fingers brushing his hand lightly, and the simple contact sent a warmth through him, a reminder of the familiarity, kindness, and quiet intimacy that had always existed between them, the kind of connection that could survive distance, time, and the inevitable changes life brings. They watched Ethan and Liam from a short distance as the boys played a simple game of ring toss, cheering each success with unrestrained joy, and Michael noticed how Carol's eyes softened, her gaze following the boys with protective affection, and he felt a pang of admiration for her patience, her care, and the subtle ways she seemed to blend effortlessly into his world, even now, years after their paths had diverged. Conversation flowed easily between them as they walked toward the exit, light and casual on the surface, yet underneath was a quiet current of emotion, a gentle rhythm of words and glances that reminded Michael of the evenings spent in her company long ago, of the soft, comforting presence that had once felt like home. Carol spoke of her recent reflections, sharing glimpses of challenges, growth, and moments of quiet solitude, and Michael listened intently, struck by the openness she allowed herself to show, the trust implicit in the way she spoke, and the way her voice seemed to wrap around him, stirring feelings he hadn't realized he still carried. The boys ran ahead to catch a last glimpse of the carousel, their laughter and shouts fading into the background as Michael and Carol walked side by side, the air between them charged with unspoken understanding, a tender acknowledgement of the bond that had survived time and distance, and he found himself captivated by the small details, the way her hair caught the light, the curve of her smile, the soft cadence of her voice, reminders of why this connection had always been meaningful. As they neared the park's exit, a quiet pause settled over them, the bustle of the crowd around them fading slightly as they stood together, and Michael felt a bittersweet pang, knowing that this day, this moment, was fleeting, yet profoundly significant, a rare interlude where past and present met in quiet harmony. Carol smiled softly at him, a mixture of warmth, fondness, and a touch of wistfulness, and Michael realized that the feelings he had buried for years, admiration, tenderness, curiosity, and longing, were alive again, gentle but undeniable, weaving through each word, each glance, each shared laugh. She thanked him for taking the boys out, her eyes lingering on his with a softness that spoke of understanding, shared history, and unspoken possibilities, and Michael returned the smile, feeling a strange mixture of contentment and yearning, knowing that these moments were precious precisely because they were fleeting. The boys came running back, tugging at Michael's hands, eager to leave but still brimming with excitement, and as he guided them toward the car, he stole one last glance at Carol, who stood for a moment at the edge of the exit, her figure bathed in the fading golden light, her presence a quiet, lingering echo in his heart. He realized that some encounters leave more than memories, they leave a gentle, lasting impression, a quiet shift in perspective, a soft reminder of what connection, warmth, and understanding feel like, even in unexpected circumstances. Driving home, Michael listened to the boys chattering excitedly about their favorite rides, their voices full of energy and joy, and yet he carried with him the memory of Carol's smile, the subtle intimacy of shared laughter and conversation, and the quiet awareness that life could surprise him with moments of tender reconnection when he least expected it. The day had been simple on the surface, a trip to the amusement park with his nephews, but beneath the laughter, the rides, and the candy, it had been a journey of rediscovery, of subtle emotional intimacy, and of quiet, meaningful connection that neither time nor circumstance could erase. Michael understood that this encounter with Carol, brief yet charged with significance, had opened a door to emotions that were complex, tender, and quietly romantic, leaving him with a mixture of contentment, curiosity, and the gentle hope that some bonds, even those thought lost, could leave a lasting imprint, shaping the heart in ways both subtle and profound, and he knew that he would carry the warmth, nostalgia, and gentle connection from this unexpected day with him for a long time, savoring the memory as both a reminder of what had been and a quiet hope for what might still be, however uncertain the future.